Welcome back to Forgotten Empires, Bedtime History. Before you get comfortable, tonight we ask one of the greatest questions in all of history. What if the Roman Empire never fell? What if those legions never retreated? What if those walls never crumbled? What if Rome had survived and kept growing? In the next 40 minutes, we will explore the world that could have been. A world of Roman technology, Roman law, Roman peace, stretching not just across Europe and Africa, but perhaps across the entire planet. If you enjoy falling asleep to the greatest stories ever told, hit subscribe and leave a like. New stories drop every 3 to 4 days. And tell us in the comments, what city are you writing from tonight? We genuinely love knowing where in the world our listeners are drifting off to sleep. Now, close your eyes, take a slow breath, and let's go back to Rome. What if the Roman Empire never fell? Close your eyes. Imagine a world where the eagle never stopped flying, where the Roman legions never retreated behind crumbling walls, where the Senate never fell silent, where the eternal city remained eternal. This is not the world we live in, but it almost was, and tonight we explore what might have been. Part 1. The world Rome built. To understand what we lost, we must first understand what Rome created. At its height, the Roman Empire was something the world had never seen before, and has never quite seen since. 60 million people lived under Roman rule, from the cold, rainy shores of Britain in the north to the burning sands of Egypt in the south, from the Atlantic coast of Spain in the west to the ancient cities of Syria in the east, all of them connected by roads, by law, by language, by trade. The roads alone were a miracle. 80,000 kilometers of paved stone roads stretched across the empire, so well built that some of them still exist today. 2,000 years later, still carrying traffic in remote corners of Europe. Roman engineers did not simply lay stones on dirt. They dug deep foundations. They layered gravel and sand. They curved the surface so rain would drain to the sides. They built roads that were meant to last forever. And they almost did. Along these roads moved everything that made civilization possible. Soldiers marching to distant frontiers, merchants carrying silk from China and spices from India, letters connecting families separated by 1,000 miles, ideas moving from one end of the known world to the other. The Roman Empire was not just a political state, it was a nervous system, a living network that connected the ancient world in ways it had never been connected before. And at the heart of this network was Rome itself, a city of 1 million people, the largest city on Earth. Walking through Rome in the year 100 AD would feel surprisingly familiar. There were apartment buildings 7 stories tall. There were restaurants and fast food shops. There were public libraries. There were hospitals. There were police and fire brigades. There was a postal system. There were newspapers, carved in stone and posted in public squares. The Romans even had something like central heating. The Hippocaust system pumped warm air under the floors and through the walls of wealthy homes and public baths. In some ways, Rome in the year 100 AD was more sophisticated than Europe would be again for 1,000 years. Part 2. Why Rome Fell. But Rome did fall. In 476 AD, The last emperor of the Western Roman Empire was deposed by a Germanic chieftain named Odoacer. His name was Romulus Augustulus. The last emperor of Rome was a teenage boy. It was a quiet, almost undramatic ending to one of the greatest civilizations in history. No great battle, no dramatic last stand, just a boy being told to go home, and an empire quietly ceasing to exist. But why? Historians have debated this question for centuries, and the answer is complicated. There was no single cause, no single moment when Rome decided to die. It was more like a slow fever that lasted for centuries and weakened everything it touched. The problems began at the borders. The Roman Empire was simply too large to defend effectively. Its frontiers stretched for thousands of kilometers, and beyond those frontiers were peoples who wanted what Rome had: the Visigoths, the Vandals, the Huns. Wave after wave of migrations and invasions that the empire could no longer repel. At the same time, Rome was weakening from within. The economy was struggling. The currency was being debased. Inflation was rising. Trade routes were becoming unsafe. The political system was collapsing. In the 3rd century alone, Rome had 26 different emperors in just 50 years. Most of them died violently. And the army, which had always been Rome's great strength, was changing. Increasingly, Rome relied on Germanic soldiers to fill its legions, men who fought for Rome, but felt no particular loyalty to it. The very people Rome had once conquered were now being paid to defend it, and when the money ran out, their loyalty ran out with it. But here is the question that haunts historians. What if Rome had made different choices? What if the reforms had come earlier? What if the borders had been managed differently? What if the political chaos of the 3rd century had been avoided? What if Rome had simply not fallen? Part 3. The world that could have been. Let us imagine. The year is 500 AD. In our timeline, Rome has already fallen. The Western Empire is gone. Europe is fragmenting into small kingdoms. The lights of civilization are dimming. But in our imagined world, Rome survived. Perhaps a great reforming emperor arose in the 4th century. Perhaps the borders were stabilized. Perhaps the economic crisis was solved. Whatever the reason, Rome endured. And now, in the year 500 AD, the eagle is still flying. What does this world look like? First, there is no dark ages. In our world, the centuries after Rome's fall are often called the Dark Ages, a period when literacy declined, when trade collapsed, when cities shrank, when the accumulated knowledge of the ancient world was nearly lost. In our imagined Roman world, none of this happens. The great libraries survive. The works of Greek and Roman scientists and philosophers are read and built upon, not lost for 1,000 years. And this changes everything. In our world, the scientific revolution didn't happen until the 1600s, 1,500 years after Rome's fall. But in a world where Rome survived, where Greek science was never lost, where the accumulated knowledge of the ancient world kept being passed down and built upon, how much earlier might it have arrived? Some historians believe a surviving Roman Empire might have developed something like modern science as early as the year 1000 AD, 500 years ahead of schedule. Think about what that means. Steam power, perhaps discovered in the 800s instead of the 1700s. Electricity, perhaps harnessed in the 1000s instead of the 1800s. Medicine, perhaps advanced enough to cure the diseases that killed half of medieval Europe. The Black Death, which killed a third of Europe's population in our timeline, might never have happened, or might have been stopped before it spread. The Romans were already experimenting with steam power. A Greek inventor named Hero of Alexandria built a working steam engine in the 1st century AD. He called it the Aeolipile, a spinning sphere powered by steam. In our world, it was treated as a curiosity, a toy, because slaves were cheaper than machines. But in a surviving Roman Empire, as the centuries passed and the empire evolved, might the Aeolipile have led to something greater? Might Roman engineers have eventually built a steam-powered mill? A steam-powered ship? A steam-powered locomotive? In our imagined world, perhaps. Part 4. Pax Romana Eternal. But technology is only part of the story. Perhaps the most profound difference in a surviving Roman world would be political. In our timeline, Rome's fall led to 1,000 years of competing kingdoms, endless wars between France and England, between the Holy Roman Empire and the papacy, between Christians and Muslims, between Protestants and Catholics. The history of medieval and early modern Europe is largely a history of violence. In a surviving Roman Empire, much of this simply doesn't happen. There is no need for the Crusades if Rome never fell and Christianity never fragmented. There is no 100 Years' War between France and England, because there is no separate France and England. There is only the Roman province of Gaul and the Roman province of Britannia. There is no 30 Years' War, no wars of religion, no centuries of European nations tearing each other apart. The Pax Romana, the Roman peace, was one of the most remarkable periods in human history. For over 200 years, from roughly 27 BC to 180 AD, the Mediterranean world enjoyed an unprecedented period of peace and prosperity. No major wars, no civilizational catastrophes, just stability, trade, growth, the slow, patient accumulation of wealth and knowledge. In our imagined world, this peace continues, interrupted occasionally by border conflicts and internal struggles, but always restored, always enduring. By the year 1000 AD in our imagined world, what might the Roman Empire look like? Perhaps it has evolved, become less of a monarchy and more of a republic again, with elected representatives from all the provinces, a senator from Britain, a senator from Egypt, a senator from Syria, a senator from the lands along the Rhine. Rome as a true world democracy, 2,000 years before our own. Part 5. Rome and the world beyond. And what about the rest of the world? In our timeline, Europe's fragmentation after Rome's fall eventually led to competition between nations. And that competition, however violent and terrible it often was, also drove exploration and innovation. England competed with Spain, Spain competed with Portugal, Portugal competed with the Netherlands, and in their competition, they explored the world, they reached the Americas, they established global trade routes, they created the foundations of the modern world. In a unified Roman Empire, this competition might not exist, but Rome was always an expansionist power, always pushing its borders outward, always seeking new lands, new trade, new resources. Might Roman ships have reached the Americas? Not in the chaotic rush of competing European nations, but in the systematic, organized way that Rome did everything. Imagine Roman legions landing in North America in the year 800 AD. not as conquerors in the violent way of the Spanish conquistadors, but as Romans, building roads, building cities, bringing Roman law, Roman engineering, Roman order. What would have happened to the peoples already living there? Would they have been absorbed into the empire? Given citizenship, as Rome gave citizenship to so many peoples it encountered? Or would the story have been just as dark as the one that actually happened? We cannot know. History is not a simple story of better or worse. It is a web of consequences that no one can fully predict. Part 6. The Christianity Question. There is one more thread we must follow. In our timeline, Christianity spread through the Roman Empire and eventually became its official religion. And when Rome fell, the Catholic Church became the institution that preserved what remained of Roman civilization. The monasteries kept the books, the bishops maintained order, the Pope claimed authority over kings and emperors. In many ways, the Church became Rome's successor. But in a surviving Roman Empire, what happens to Christianity? It might still spread. The message of Jesus was powerful regardless of political circumstances, but without Rome's fall to give the Church its unique political power, Christianity might have remained one religion among many, competing with the old Roman gods, with Mithraism, with the mystery cults from Egypt and the East, a more religiously diverse world. Whether that would be better or worse than the world we know is not for us to say. It would simply be different. Epilogue. The Dream of Rome. The Roman Empire fell 1600 years ago, and yet it never really left us. The languages of Italy, France, Spain, Portugal, and Romania are all daughters of Latin. The legal systems of most Western countries trace their roots to Roman law. The very idea of a republic, of elected representatives, of citizens with rights, comes from Rome. The calendar you use, the months of the year. July, named for Julius Caesar. August, named for Augustus. The roads you drive on follow routes first surveyed by Roman engineers. The buildings in your city with their columns and arches and domes are speaking the language of Rome. Rome never really fell. It transformed. It fragmented. It spread itself into the DNA of Western civilization so thoroughly that we carry it with us every day without even knowing it. So perhaps the question is not what if Rome never fell. Perhaps the question is, did it ever really fall at all? The empire of laws and language and ideas. The empire that taught the world what civilization could look like. That empire is still here, in every courthouse, in every parliament, in every road and bridge and arch, in every word you speak, that traces its roots to the lips of a Roman senator 2,000 years ago. Sleep now. Let the dream of Rome drift through your mind, the sound of sandals on stone roads, the murmur of the Senate in debate, the distant call of a Roman trumpet echoing across the hills, a civilization that believed it would last forever. And in a way, it did. Good night. And remember, every empire believed it would last forever. None of them did. But Rome came closer than most.